I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Before we get going, I want to ask you to let people know that we're live, that we're engaging in what I call a robust conversation. Our goal is to connect, to share, to think aloud, and to think with each other about who we are, where we're going, and what we have to do to get there. This is a critical time. It's an important time because we've just come through a major inflection point. I think we're in the middle of it, but we had hoped to see a change, a movement towards a progressive new dispensation in this country and in the world. We had hoped. I can say on my own behalf and on behalf of Insight News and the people I'm associated with, we had hoped that Vice President Kamala Harris will prevail in the general election, but things have turned out as they have turned out, and we still believe that it simply means we got to keep working towards the community, the sense of humanity, the sense of obligation to each other and with each other that we've always had. Simply, it's time to double down. To one degree, the question is whether the other side, the people that prevailed in the election, the people that supported President-elect Donald Trump, how they feel about the America, and is their version, their vision of America substantially different from ours? And if it is, both God bless them, but we also have to stay true to our vision and our hope and our aspiration. And I think our vision included figuring out a way to have a better life for us, and a better life for us meant a better life for them as well. That's the point that I want to keep making. Well, listen, let's go deep into deconstructing the election. And I'm pleased to have one of the architects of the successful campaign in Minnesota to get people to the polls and to have them vote the right way, and that is State Senator Bobby Joe Champion, who's the president of the Minnesota Senate. Bobby Joe, brother, good to see you. Senator Champion, as always, good to see you, and hats off to you. Kudos to you for all the work that you did on the Harris uh, Walz campaign. You delivered Minnesota. We did our part, and I think that you delivered our community, the community that you represent, Senate District 59, and the urban community, the Black community, people of color, and the consensus of the state voters in support of the vision that we share. But let me ask you right now, what are you thinking about, and what did you think about on election day as the numbers came in?
Well, two things. Let me say, first of all, start by saying thank you, Al, as usual, for being a great mentor and a great leader and just a great voice in our community and really forcing all of us, no matter where you live, to think about critical issues that we are facing in our society. Needless to say that the election is one of those data points and points of information that requires uh, us to dissect or decipher what the numbers tell us. Right. One is know that um, we worked long and hard in order to lift up, Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz, because we really did believe and still remain uh, committed to understanding that they were the best choice for our country. When there's an election, then the people are spoken, and I often say that our vote is our voice. And what is it that we were saying in this last election? One is I see that the gender gap is real, right?
Mhm.
Those who overwhelmingly were divided based on gender.
Mhm.
I will say that it causes you to scratch your head because the gender gap has been real since our history, right? And there are those who believe, not me. I'm just quoting things uh, 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 that the pundits have been talking about and that our talking heads have been talking about, that One, that the gender gap is real. We've seen and know that there's a cross section of men, unfortunately, who don't believe that a woman can lead. But what also sort of undermines that argument, or at least there's another thing for us to consider, is that um, like in the Hillary Clinton ordeal, that we had a number of white women who did not vote for a woman, right?
Hmm.
And they opted to vote for Donald Trump, and that happened when Hillary Clinton, ran her race, and in this race, in the vice president's race. What is also interesting about the information and all these things I'm raising is really for us to stop and think about it and dig as deep as we can to try to understand the nuances. But one thing that was talked about early on is whether black men would vote for Vice President Harris. And if you look at the numbers, overwhelmingly, uh, black men, African American men, and African American women um, voted for Vice President Harris and Governor Walz at a high clip, right? So we know that to be true. But you know what else we found out, Al, is
Hmm.
that when Biden won, he won with 81 million votes. That's the number of people that voted for him, and I believe that uh, uh, that number is right. But we also see that Vice President Harris only got 66 million votes. That's
Hmm.
roughly a 15 million vote difference
Hmm.
between Biden and Harris. Now, what's also interesting is that former President Trump uh, received something around 71 million votes,
Hmm.
which was down 4 or 5 million from before, right?
Hmm.
And so we know that turnout was an issue, and what drove people to stay home. We know that there's the unfortunate issues that are going on in Gaza and Israel, and there's some young people who, and other people. I would just want to say young people, but there's some people who believe that they just were not going to come out and support Vice President Harris or the Democrats. And then there are those who you know, opted to, support Trump for whatever reason. But we know that a large percentage of them did not vote, right? So when you look at that number and just other young people that who didn't vote, whether they, felt like they truly understood the two candidates or not, or what was at risk. Um, and there are other analyses, whether it's with labor, and that labor, they say that the leadership supported Democrats, but some decided not to give an endorsement because their rank and file
Hmm.
supported Republicans. That's something to be talked about, is because Democrats have been really pro labor and have done everything that you could think of to protect those who want to collectively bargain, those who want to establish a union, and to make sure, like in the great state of Minnesota, that we have a pro-union state and that we do not have a right to work state, which is a plus, that we do not have a right to work state. So I think there are going to be additional discussions about these critical issues and asking some real hard questions, um, because most people would just say, give a bumper sticker response as to what happened, and we'll say about the gender thing. But then how do you account for white women who didn't vote for her or Hillary Clinton? So
Hmm.
these are all the things that I'm thinking about and I'm looking at. I can't say that I have figured them all out, but I will tell you that I'm going to do my part to try to figure it out, because it has to inform us going forward.
Hmm.
And sometimes we
Hmm.
have to have hard conversations that we don't want to have with each other, even if it was a loved one, that behaved a certain way. Sometimes we have to have hard conversations to understand the origin of their disenchantment, or whether there are facts that they don't know. I remember being on another radio station this past weekend where I talked about one other aspect of this conversation was young people who would get all of their information from social media.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have social media being the origin of your information, and the intelligence community told us that Russia and China and other places were deliberately planting uh, misinformation,
Disinformation. Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or disinformation. So if that information is there and you're getting all of your information from that source, then that means you're operating with bad information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and then whether we our critical thinkers quite the way we were before, and how do we challenge and test that? Because I remember growing up, I never relied on one source of information, right? You were required to test the information from many different places to see if it's true or not to just rely 100% on what's on social media or Twitter or some other platform, right? Or those who just look to get their endorsements from the Washington Post or Star Tribune, where we now see that there's an overwhelming number of very rich guys who are owning all the media outlets, right? And controlling what happens and what cannot happen. So there's a whole layer of concerns that we should be talking about and thinking about, because the world we know is changing expeditiously, and it requires us to stop and think about what we're doing and what are we going to do in the future. So that was a long answer, but you
Yeah.
wanted me to give
It's
you an analysis
context.
of some things that are in context, right?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Well, let me drill down a little bit. Let me talk to you, ask you to talk about um, Minnesota, how Minnesota showed up in the national elections and what the consequence was locally here. What changes are we looking at in state government down ballot from the national? I think that despite those supporters' disappointment, the ones who supported the Harris Walsh team, despite their disappointment, there's a sense of real pride in the effective local initiative. And I think that despite the disappointment in her not winning, are looking at what a marvelous job she did in 100 days, right? In
Oh yeah.
organizing a massive campaign. So you can't take that away from her. And the other thing
No.
is that people are saying, having done that tremendous feat, putting together a 100-day campaign to stand against a campaign that had been running for 3 years. Trump's been running the campaign for 3 years and actually is coming back from his previous, presidency. So that was a marvelous, impossible feat in and of itself. And people, I think, are proud. So let me ask you how you assess that, and what are you proud of what Minnesota did in this election?
So, so thank you for the question. I'm proud of the fact that Minnesota remained blue, and that through all the challenges and misinformation or disinformation or falsities, false claims, that we stayed true, right?
Mm,
And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that the vice president and Governor Walz came in late, to a campaign, and rejuvenize the party, and we were able to coalesce around this candidate or their candidacy. So I'm proud of that. And how did that trickle down in Minnesota? Well, obviously that we were able to deliver Minnesota for the Harris Walz campaign. What I'm also proud about is that we did a good job of making sure that these constituencies that we believe to be very important turned out. It wasn't without a fight. It wasn't without the need to um, refocus people or make sure that we were giving them, quality information. All that's true, and we should continue to do that. What Minnesota also did nationally is when our governor became a prominent figure, or even when he was first proposed to be the vice
mm-mm. Lost the senator for a minute. He's obviously in transit on his way back to the state capitol in could be in a dead spot on the internet, and we'll come back. We'll just keep talking until he gets back with us. And my line of questioning is this. Uh, One of the things that I was excited about was the fact that had the Harris-Walz campaign succeeded, something that had never happened before would happen in Minnesota. What do you mean? The lieutenant governor would have been elevated to the position of governor when our governor resigned to become the vice president of the United States. Bobby Joe Champion likely would have been, by constitutional authority, elevated to the position of lieutenant governor. Think about that. A, a Native American woman as the governor of the Minnesota hasn't happened before, might be one of the first in the country, and an African American man as lieutenant governor. And then all the shifts that would occur down ballot from them in North Minneapolis and in South Minneapolis, I think it would have been exciting. And so we, meaning me and the teams that I work with regularly, were sort of excited about the potential, what could happen if the ticket had succeeded. It didn't, but I would love to explore what would have happened, what Bobby Joe Champion thought his moves would have been, could have been as lieutenant governor. We do that with the idea that in the future, there still are opportunities for us to have a seismic shift in how we do business, how we show up, and where and how the power flows in our state and in the country. That's what this is about. It's about power and the power to serve the people and serve ideas that represent what humanity should be about. That's what the democratic experiment, in my belief, is. Well, that is what I'd love to continue the conversation with Bobby Joe Champion about. The other thing that I would ask him is to talk about the expansion of the number of BIPOC people elected to the Minnesota Senate and House of Representatives. Bobby Joe is back, I think. Yeah, we probably going through Wi-Fi deserts on your way to the Capitol. So I was raising questions about what I was going to ask you. I'll just briefly say what it was. You got about a few minutes left. What would have happened what point were you making last? Let's start with that. You were making a point. And did you hear my last question?
Hey, I'm having okay.
I hear you.
I think you
I hear
can
you
hear me
now.
okay now.
I do.
Um,
I do.
I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not. Yeah, we were going through some deserts, and I'm not sure where I left off. But I was just talking about how Minnesota delivered
Yeah.
for the Harris Walls campaign and how we're proud of that. But we also recognize that there's some things that we need to do to help make sure that we don't lose any ground in Minnesota. And I often talk about that there needs to be some work uh, when we're not in campaign mode, right? You know, hearing from people and talking to people and understanding the nuances, and also making sure that electeds become more informed of local issues that are nuanced, as opposed to just a one size fit all sort of proposition, right? So um, I'm proud of the Harris campaign, the work that they did, the work that was done locally. I'm proud that we were able to get various constituencies out and that we were pushing back against misinformation, uh, and that we were able to deliver Minnesota. And like I was saying, I was also proud that when we're on the national stage, because of our governor being the vice presidential candidate, um, we were able to highlight a number of different policies that Minnesota should be very proud of.
Well, I had made reference to President Biden saying early on that he was going to be a transformational president. And I think what he meant was his commitment to transforming, opening up, breaking the glass ceiling by supporting his vice president in her bid to succeed him, whether that would be in 2028 or, as it turned out, in 2024 when he decided to resign. Then I said, I think I've heard language to that same effect from our governor, Governor Walz. Not exactly the same, but the situation, the dynamic is the same. In as much as if he and the team succeeded in moving to Washington, it meant that his lieutenant governor, a Native American woman, would ascend to become Minnesota's first governor, who is a woman, I believe, and the first governor who is Native American. And you, as
across the
president
nation.
across the
Hmm.
nation, and
Hmm.
you, as the president of the Minnesota Senate, would become the first in Minnesota African American governor. That alone significant, but you add to that the fact that the other two constitutional posts in our state government, maybe two or three, include the state Attorney General Keith Ellison. And just imagining Keith Ellison, Bobby Joe Champion, and uh, uh, Governor Peggy Flanagan was a delight for the imagination. I know you didn't want to get in front of yourself, but what would you have been doing? What kinds of things would you have seen yourself able to move further with this new configuration of state government had the election gone the other way? And is it worth
Uh,
talking about? I think it's worth talking about, but what do you think? Maybe
yeah.
you think it's not.
No, I always think it's worth talking about what it means when we try to make strides that moves our society forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think in terms of just the possibility of being the results of your parents and grandparents' dreams.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about Martin Luther King, I'm reading a book called King of Life, which is by Jonathan Ig, and how in the book he captures the fact that King often refers to wanting there to be a better country for his children and his grandchildren, and
Mm-hmm.
and and even for those who were living at that particular time. And so I think the idea of what is possible being demonstrated in action, I think is always worth the effort. And so some of the things I would have continued to work on would be economic development because, when we deal with all the disparities, the common denominator is poverty. How do we make sure that we are moving people out of poverty and getting them a chance or giving them a chance to live up to their God-given potential, where we all benefit from that. Not only
Mm-hmm.
just their family and their neighborhood and community, but we all benefit as a society when people are able to live up to their God-given purpose. Education is very important to me. I have been, and I was the first person in my entire family to go to college, right? And so, but it opened up the door for other people in the community to see me and go, "Whoa, wait a minute."
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, you went to college, so I can too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. Or even my elevation to be president of the Senate, where there's never been a person of color who ever presided over a legislative body in the state of Minnesota. And remember, our statehood was in 1858, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you just think about that, right? And just think about the number of young people who come into the Capitol and they see me and they stop and talk to me and that they can just know that it's possible. And then for me to be able to be there and they can touch, feel, and talk to me, and I can say, "Hey, I grew up in North Minneapolis. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
first person in my family to go to college. If I can do it,
That's
you
right.
can do it."
This is
And
real.
so this is real, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not just abstract, some abstract notion, but it's real because we can touch and see it and feel it in our lifetime. So, and then to be able to be at the table to talk about education or higher ed or healthcare or home ownership or climate change or any of the issues that we all believe to be important to us, to have another voice at that table that brings another experience that provides an opportunity for us to improve our policies because you got a diverse group of voices at the table, uh, is what I always strive for, and we will continue to push forth that agenda. Because there's a
And
well-known saying that says, "If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu,"
you're right.
right?
Well, in the last 3 minutes we've got here, Senator Champion, um, the trifecta was an unusual situation that you had, allowing you to deliver millions of dollars into the Black community and other marginalized communities. That status is not decided as of this moment, as I understand. Am I correct, or is that still?
Yeah, so the Senate, as you know, we have the majority in the Senate. We were able to retain our 34th vote, which was in Senate District 45. That was the seat that was held by then Senator Kelly Morrison, and she decided to run for Congress to fill the seat of Dean Phillips. She was successful in winning that, um, and then the person who sought to replace her, in fact, come back to the Senate. Her name is Ann Johnson Stewart, because Ann Johnson Stewart was the senator before Kelly Morrison, and then redistricting, created some challenges there. But Ann Johnson Stewart is back, so we're able to retain that. In the House, as you probably are referring to, uh, right now, as the votes sit, it's 67-67 because
Mhm.
there's a total of 134 House members, and I served in the House from '08 to 2012, and so that being tied, the only other time this has happened was in 1979
Mhm.
when they had to come up with uh, an agreement as to how they were going to deal with who should be Speaker of the House, or who's going to be chair of major committees. So they have to work out an agreement, um, and until that agreement is worked out, the person who will preside over the House will be the Secretary of State. He doesn't have a vote. He
Mhm.
just has to preside over the body until they come to some agreement, because you can't designate or identify chairs.
Mhm.
You can't do anything until you have until they come up with some agreement. Should the votes as they sit right now maintain? Here's what you should know: there are two seats, uh, two Democratic seats that are up for recount, because they fall within the margin for there to be an automatic recount. So should that
Mhm.
prevail and hold up, then it's 67-67, and we have to strap in and get ready for uh, an enormous fight to figure out what we're going to do, especially with this being a budget year.
So, BIPOC coalition, it's huge. In the past 10 years, the number of people of color, relatively speaking. I remember when you and I started talking about politics years ago, it was you and Jeff,
Yep.
the dynamic duo, right? You and Jeff
Yep.
Hayden, and just so few. But that has exploded with the new Latino, Hmong, Asian, and
Somali.
Somali. And so
Mhm.
now there's a fairly sizable contingent of people of color, and it's really a power block that's unparalleled. What can that power block do? What can they do to influence and shape and move towards an agenda that serves the state, but particularly people of color?
Well, I think there's a lot that could be done. One is their voice is going to be important, because with the vote being so narrow, uh, all votes are going to be necessary in order to move some policy forward. So there's an unprecedented opportunity for the Pocky Caucus, people of color and indigenous caucus, to think about their values and what they believe to be important, and what policies are being put forward, and how those policies must and should respond to their communities, because that would just improve the policy. So there will always be an opportunity, but you got to also be willing to be courageous, right? Because sometimes we get along just to get along, instead of understanding that there was a reason why you were sent to the state capital, right? Not to be a contrarian, but to say that all these policies must be uh, contributors to improving all of our quality of life. And that's not to the chagrin or disdain of others, but you want your voice at the table, and you try to find consensus. And there are so many people who think negotiation is a bad word. It's not a bad word. That's the only way that we can sometimes move things forward, so everybody gets a little what they need. But if you get people who just say it's my way or the highway, then we'll have gridlock, and we'll have little advancements. And as a result of that, all Minnesotans suffer as a result of that, whether it's just Minnesotans because you're on the state level, or if that's in Washington, D.C. as well.
You got to go, Bobby Joe Champion, Senator Champion, Senate President Champion, Bobby Joe Champion. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for spending time with me today. I want to get back when you get a chance to talk more about how do we develop a bench in the African American community so that even more opportunities can be carved out, explored, exploited, created, and add to the movement of change and growth in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for having me, and thank you for just always being who you are. We all appreciate your leadership and who you are and your humanity. So thank you so much, Al.
Senator Champion, thank you. We'll see you later. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Well, what a wonderful conversation. What a wonderful leader. It's an awesome conversation to follow up that. And we're going to pivot right away to another one of the constituents served by Senator Champion. I'm in the senator's district, but also my next guest, Crystal Porter, is. Crystal Porter is leading the West Broadway Business Association. I think it's called the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition. And I want to talk about what that organization is doing, what's the future like, and then particularly create an opportunity for her to invite our community to support businesses along the West Broadway corridor. A lot of good stuff is happening. Crystal Porter is also, I believe, an environmentalist, environmental activist of note. And I never want to pass up the opportunity for her to weigh in on how we continue to develop chops, leadership, and resources that make our community environmentally aware, healthy, and forward thinking. Please welcome Crystal Porter. Crystal, good to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? It's good to see you.
Marvelous, marvelous. So glad that you could join us on short notice too. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, I
So,
was in a meeting. Shamika called me. She's like, could you
yeah,
join? I'm like, yeah, heck yeah.
jump on this.
Hang
That's
out with
right. Yeah.
Al.
It's important. It's important. Well, you guys are doing some wonderful stuff. Let's take, first of all, take the time to tell people what you want the public to do to support and to benefit from the marvelous resources on West Broadway, members of the West Broadway Business Association, in as much as you've organized some holiday activity that could be of benefit to everybody. Talk about that first.
Well, we're actually doing some really cool things, and I'm not unique. This is stuff that has happened before I was around as the executive director. We're just kind of making it bigger and better every year. So we actually have an event coming up. It's Black Friday on West Broadway. And it is happening at the Capri Theater. So that will be Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving. This is where we bring in our top-notch businesses, local businesses that have participated in a lot of our other events like Black Business Week and Open Streets, West Broadway. And we bring them in so that we can have one space where everybody can come and support these businesses. A lot of people shop around the holidays. They buy presents for their family and friends, and a lot of these big box stores, you've seen the videos, people running over each other, trying to get in and get those deals. And I like that you said that, I'm an environmentalist, kind of set it up for the fact that, we need to be more conscientious when it comes to our buying habits.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize that a lot of the, products and things that are on our shelves have traveled thousands of miles to get to us. There was one time I was at a Trader Joe's and I looked at these little this ice cream pack, and it was like 6 little mochi ice creams in there. And it came from Lithuania. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
6 pieces of ice cream rode on a boat across the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
And then a semi truck that probably got 10 miles to the gallon and traveled across the country to make it to the Trader Joe's in Minneapolis for me to pick it up and have a few minutes of joy. Because of course I ate all 6 at once. But aside from that, it's like, it's ridiculous, and the reality is things aren't going to get better until we start supporting our local businesses, and in a holistic way. It comes back and it benefits us, and in all in many layers. And of course, we need to support our local economy, right? If we want our economy to become strong, if we want our tax base to increase, and for our schools and our roads and our parks to be funded, then we need to make sure that we're spending money with our community first. If we want to increase our local community wealth, we talk about building Black wealth. Well, we need to make sure that when we're making a conscious decision to purchase something, to try to find something that's within our neighborhood first before we venture outside of the neighborhood. I mean, I'm not going to ignore the pink elephant in the room, that we do have a supply issue in North Minneapolis. Our demands are not being met, whether it's our needs or our wants, they're just not being met. But there are some things that are met, and we have to be really conscious about making sure that those things that are there that do meet that demand, we should make that purchase first. And you hear all these comments about, oh, it's so expensive to buy there. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it might be 50 cents more here.
Yeah.
How much gas are you spending to go
and time
in another? Yeah. And time. Time is
Mhm.
worth more than anything. You never get that back. And so you have to really kind of like weigh that out. And, what comes back is not even just the financial piece. It's when I build a local business owner and I support them, they increase the return on their investment and they increase their capacity. When they increase their capacity, then they're able to supply more of our demand. They're able to hire somebody from our community. They're able to create jobs. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we are going out of our way to support our community. It is not easy to start a business. It's very difficult. And they say, like, if you don't make it through the first 3 years, you're basically not going to make it. Well, those 3 years, they can multiply to 6 to even 8 years when it comes to members of our community. So we need to make sure that when somebody takes that time and takes that step out of their job to start a business and to go into a venture like that we support them and we lift them up. Other communities have done it in the past. We've seen in different waves of immigrant communities come into our country, and they did that with each other. They supported each other. And if they didn't have somebody educated in something, they made sure that person got educated so they could be the community's doctor or the community's lawyer, the community's realtor. We need to do that for each other. So, and I'm not just talking about the Black community in general. I'm talking about North Minneapolis. North Minneapolis is a family. We are. At the end of the day, we are a family, and we need to make sure that we're supporting each other no matter what. Yeah. So
take a minute and drill down and be specific. I'd love to give you the chance to highlight. I know you can't name every business, but you probably have something that have really jumped in with both feet to try to ensure that the promotion is successful. Give them some play and invite people to know what opportunities are there.
For sure. So I actually have a gym membership at Anytime Fitness on West Broadway. That's right across the street from the Kama J Studio. And it's a lovely gym. It's very affordable. And it's owned by a Black woman, and people told her that she couldn't open up an Anytime Fitness over North, and it wouldn't be successful, and that it wouldn't survive. She had to fight a lot of people to make sure that she could make this happen. So many people came against her, and she did it, and it's still there, and it made it through COVID. It made it through civil unrest. It made it through all of these, the disinvestment of our community and the lack of patronage on the avenue. It's still there. So I highly recommend, if you're looking for a gym, especially if you have a schedule like mine, where sometimes you might not be able to get a work in until midnight, 2 a.m, you can do it, so and then
so the obvious question would come: is it safe at 2 a.m? Because we also suffer in this neighborhood from a stigma, right? That our neighborhood.
Might find me. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You're saying people can comfortably and safely enjoy Anytime Fitness because it's available 24/7, and that's real.
That is
and
real.
it's available, and people should get over the disinformation, right,
Mhm,
about their safety, and
mhm,
recognize that really the
mhm.
systems are in place for them to enjoy their best life right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. There's the perceived, people have a perceived risk, right? And then there's
Hmm.
an actual risk, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when you see people hanging outside on West Broadway, that doesn't mean it's unsafe. It just means
Hmm.
that you got people that like to hang outside on West Broadway.
Sure.
When you see, the barbecue truck on West Broadway selling barbecue, it's because there is no space for them to rent so they can open up their restaurant. It's
Hmm.
because the people that have land or a building are not opening that space and making it available for people to open up a business and rent it out there. So they are doing things by their own means and trying to
Yeah.
make it work.
Sure.
And so
Sure.
and actually there was a gentleman that was selling his his goods in the parking lot of the Capri for many
Hmm.
years, and now he has a storefront. He
Hmm.
has a storefront right next to Clipper Cuts, and it's a retail store just opened up in the last couple of months. So, it's
Hmm.
we don't have the same access
You
to
frozen
loans.
there. She'll come back in a second. There we go.
Sorry
I think you're
about that.
back now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have the same access to loans and financing
Hmm.
as other as other communities, and so sometimes we have to open up our businesses in unique ways,
Hmm.
through connections or credit cards or whatever, but
Hmm.
at the end of the day, it's like when you see people standing outside of Broadway, doesn't mean it's unsafe. Say hello, say hi, say what's up.
Sure,
you
sure.
know
Well,
um,
name some more businesses that are going to be prominent in the promotions coming up for the holiday season.
yeah, so I recommend, we have the Dream Shop. The Dream Shop will be at our event as well. I don't know if you've ever been in her store. She's not on Broadway, but we serve the entire West Broadway area, so that goes all the
Hmm.
way up to Lowry Avenue. And Markella, she's actually one of the women that came up with Black Friday on West Broadway years ago. It was her idea,
Hmm.
and because she didn't have the capacity on her own to do it, she partnered with WBC, partnered with Neon, and made Black Friday on West Broadway happen. She curates a whole bunch of different artists and creators in her store, and so she's gonna have a lot of really great jewelry and candles and all kinds of really cool things for you to purchase. We're gonna have a fashion show, and I don't know if people that are listening to this, if they've probably attended Fashion Week at the W or at the the that what is it, the Walker Art Center throughout the years. These are really nice fashion shows, and some of the same fashion designers will be there at this event as well. So we're gonna have we're it's going to be a little bit smaller. We're not going to do as big as we did with 35, 40 vendors as we've done in the past. It's going to be 20 of our top-notch vendors that are going to be there. And so, and we're going to have food trucks.
Hmm.
There'll be food trucks right outside of the Capri, so you'll be able to grab something to eat. And then we're also implementing a historic art display as well, which is going to display a lot of the things that have happened over the years at Black Friday, and you might even see yourself on some of these displays as well, if you attended in the past and shopped at Black Friday as well. So yeah, that's what we have coming up. But when it comes to what we are doing for the Avenue, I will say you're going to start seeing some really cool things pop up. I don't know if you've noticed when driving down the Avenue, we've got big planters that have been installed onto the lamp posts across the avenue. Those are going to be filled with spruce tips and more of a seasonal filler. And then when the spring comes, they're going to be filled with flowers. So we made that investment. We made a $25,000 investment. We matched it with the bid, which was another $25,000 to make that happen.
Hmm.
So get outside your car and walk, take pictures in front of it.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're doing some really cool things on the Avenue, and now we're working on a cultural ambassador partnership with the city of Minneapolis. We're going to be hosting a series of 4 discussions of community members to capture what the culture of North Minneapolis is, what it looks, tastes, feels, and sounds like. And we are planning to design what we want on our cultural corridor. We'll be working with an architect, and then we'll be showcasing that in July. So we're really excited about some of the things that we're working on, and hopefully, soon we'll start to see some of that stuff come to life.
Let's be specific on the dates of the events coming up in the
Yes.
December promotion, so we can make sure people can write
Yes.
it down or
Yes.
get the
So
email. And
yes. So Black Friday on West Broadway is actually going to be happening on Friday, on November 29th, and Saturday, November 30th. Black Friday is going to happen from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So swing by there before you go to those big box stores and get your other things that you want to get for Christmas. Come and support these businesses first. You'll probably be pleasantly surprised about what's offered. And you might not have to go anywhere else. I actually did all my holiday shopping at Black Friday on West Broadway last year. So, and then Small Business Saturday, that's what we're calling Small Business Saturday on the 30th. So there's no excuse. Thanksgiving is over. You've been able to spend that time with family, and there's nobody in school. You probably got the day off of work. Everything's pretty much shut down that weekend. So come through and be intentional and come and support these businesses that work very hard to provide things that are unique to our community.
I, Crystal, think about Insight being a North Side business, and I don't know for sure, but you can help me. I think that we may be the oldest Black-owned business where the original owner is still running the business.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true, but we have crossed
I would
into our
stand by that.
50th year. Look into that.
Wow,
So
Al.
we've got 50 years. We started in North Minneapolis. We started in my residence. In fact, that's where I am right now, doing the live stream. And we moved from my dining room table into my basement, and then from my basement after a year or two to downtown Minneapolis, 2 locations, and we moved to St. Paul for 3 or 4 years in 2 different locations, and finally we bought the building on just off of West Broadway on Bryant that we call the Marcus Garvey House.
Yes.
And I raised the question because I say it's been a long road, and I'm just wondering how many other Black-owned businesses have reached that 50-year milestone under the same ownership, under the same original owner. And I don't know, I may be
You might be the only one.
oldest Black-owned business with the same owner, the maybe owner in Twin Cities, maybe in Minnesota. So do the research. And if that's the case, let's celebrate that together.
I
and
would
use that
love
as
to celebrate
a
that.
marketing tool for
You haven't
something
aged a bit. You look exactly the same from when I was looking at you when I was a young lady. So no, man, it's amazing. That is so cool. And I remember actually being in the Marcus Garvey house a few times, and it's just it's beautiful, and I wish that we could say that for more businesses, but we will be able to. We will. And that's what's exciting is, we're in a time right now where West Broadway Avenue has the most Black property owners that we've ever seen in history on the avenue. Now we're talking about commercial properties. That's a new phenomenon. And so, we're working with these businesses and trying to figure out, right now we're kind of at a standstill because we don't know what's going to go on with the light rail. So it makes it very difficult to get some developments done. But at the same time, there are spaces where the route is not going to affect it. And so what can we do in those spaces to start redeveloping that? So we've been sitting down with a lot of property owners and figuring out their financing and putting together plans on redevelopment. And Right now, we are partnered with Pillsbury United Communities, and we worked on some research and some data with the University of Minnesota and Cura, gathering information on what the demand is in North Minneapolis. Where is the supply? Where are we going? Where is our money leaking out to? What businesses do we do? A lot of 55411 and 12 zip code residents are all shopping at some of the same stores, and how do we make sure that we make sure that is here in North Minneapolis? If we're traveling and venturing outside to go get it, how do we make sure that we have that here? And then also identifying businesses that already currently exist in North Minneapolis that people outside of the community are coming to. And how do we capitalize on that? And then when we're applying for funding as a nonprofit, there's only so much we can do as a nonprofit. We can provide the business technical assistance, the workshops, and the guidance. But at the end of the day, when we're applying for funding, instead of that's an opportunity. When you get some dollars in, we should be figuring out a way to take that funding, and instead of throwing a one-off event or a one-off thing, to be really intentional about how can we implement that in our overall plan for our small area master plan, right? What can we capture those dollars and invest it and turn it into something big?
Revenue streams, broadening sustainable revenue streams for the businesses involved, but also for the community, for the incomes for workers, et cetera. So I hope that one of the things that will go into your planning and thinking is how do we understand and be intentional about developing what I call the information infrastructure. And that is to make sure that we're not looking at an Insight News or other community communication vehicles as an afterthought, but as part of our intentional toolkit to develop awareness, engagement, to do market building, et cetera. Let me pivot again, because I introduced you as an environmentalist, and you've done some marvelous things, and you continue to be a passionate advocate for helping us think of ourselves, redefine ourselves as environmentalists. Back in the day, say when I was in college at the U, the idea of the progressive, the hip people was that, we're kind of into Mother Earth and Gaia, and, as if that's a separate world from the civic engagement or the revolutionary vibe that the Black Power movement and that the Civil Rights movement engaged. And what we've learned over the generations is that ultimately the move for and towards civil rights, human liberation must include a sense of responsibility for the planet and its resources. They go hand in hand. It's not either or. It's not a dichotomy. The proper approach is to understand the interconnectedness of all. And so how have you been so successful in changing, broadening, expanding the narratives so that ordinary people see themselves differently? It's not us and them, but it's how we as community exercise stewardship, and how that stewardship involves understanding sustainability, resources, buying local, supporting local businesses, hiring, paying livable wages, right? Getting transportation that works for our community, and developing a sense of equity in all things as a rule, as a way of life. What do you think? Number one, kudos for your thoughts and what you've done. Build on that for me.
Man, we could probably have a 5-hour discussion, because you already sparked so many things that I'm so passionate about, and I could go in a deep dive, and we could peel back so many layers. But one of the things that I would say is the reason why my mind is the way it is and why I have these passions is because I was lucky enough to develop or establish a relationship with the environment at a very young age. When you are somebody who has gone through trauma, and you have the chance to be able to experience nature, you remember that your body remembers that experience. You remember how it brought you peace and how that peace stayed with you weeks after. Just a simple walk in nature or a camp trip with a group of people or a family member, and you come back and you're still at peace a week later. You're still feeling that. And so one of the things that I try to do is create opportunity for the people in my community to be able to have those moments. I started a group called the Cycle Sisters, and we would go out and do things in nature. We, hit the trails, go on a bike ride, or we'd do archery in the woods or yoga in the park, or just last month I took a group out camping, and we spent the whole weekend just sitting around a fire, taking a nature walk together, and so that's where it starts. It starts then, because when you start to have a relationship with nature and you start to respect it, and then you want to protect it. When you fall in love with something or someone, you want to protect it. And that's how that starts. And then you start to think about where you grew up and how you didn't have access to that. And that's, we're lucky. We live in a city that has a lot of parks, has a lot of green spaces. But the fact that growing up, we didn't spend much time there because that wasn't the norm. It was there.
And we didn't think it was for us. We didn't think it was for us.
No,
it was for them and not for us. And we were looked at with a side eye when we showed up. And sometimes we were threatened.
Very much so. Very much so. And I think that's where it all started. And when you create those spaces and even Anthony Taylor, he does this where he has lots of events where he brings Black folks out into out to nature, teaches them how to, do, sports or activities that, have to do with being outside, and they experience it. And they're also in a safe space because they're surrounded by people that look like them. And so that's where it all starts. And as I got older and I started to get more educated and start understanding that, there is a threat. There's a threat to the very thing that I love so much, and that is the environment, that climate change is real. And that the community that I live in is we have a lot of things coming against us when it comes to environmental racism. We just do. And North Minneapolis, we have the HERC, that is where the entire county burns its trash, is right here in North Minneapolis. We've got 5 metal recycling facilities.
Take a minute, Crystal, and give us the update on HERC. That's in the news right now. City Council. What's going on with that? Just a short.
So the HERC actually has to, they've just been told that they have to close down. And they have, they actually have to close, and we've got time, but the conversation that's happening is going, okay, so now that we don't have the HERC, if the HERC is not going to be here anymore, what does that mean for where is our trash going to go? And so this is where the education has to come in. It's like, all right, we can't just dump all of our trash in a black bin anymore. We have to be a little more cautious about, how we dispose of our things. And then not even just that, we have to be more cautious about what we're purchasing and bringing into our homes first. And that's one of the things that I keep bringing up about North Minneapolis and the demand and the supply. It's like, it's hard to participate in things like that when you don't have access to those environmentally sustainable goods. You just, you go to somewhere else in the city, they've got co-ops. The coffee shops have compostable items. The to-go containers are compostable. And here in North Minneapolis, we've got styrofoam, black plastic, lots of chips and wrappers and plastic, water bottles. And so that's one of the things that I'm glad that I'm at the Business Association, because that's one thing that I'm going to be definitely pushing, and is zero waste, and getting away from, and also being very knowledgeable about what should we put in the blue bin, what are we supposed to be recycling, because a lot of people just don't know. They don't know. And then also, organics recycling. What do I have that I'm going to use that will break back down into dirt? And also being mindful about what things that I purchase that can turn back into dirt. Should I buy this thing or should I buy this thing? I should probably buy this thing. Yes, it costs a little bit more, but it's better for the environment overall. It's better for my health. It's better for my community's health.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those folks that I'm not going to ignore the pink elephant in the room. At the end of the day, you're not going to get a bunch of young kids to stop eating Takis. They're going to eat their Takis. And so the one thing that does have to happen is, yes, we can vote with our wallet before we vote with our ballot and choose to make more wise purchase decisions. But at the end of the day, whoever's making Takis needs to start making compostable packaging. So, there's that as well. So, but there's things that we can do, in our community where we can lead the way. And I always said this.
Whoever is making Takis has to also account for the impact on obesity.
Oh gosh, yes.
And other health. Listen, we're out of time. This has been a great beginning conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I just am glad that you had a chance to drop in and kick it with me for a minute. Let's do it again.
I would love to come back
do it again
and
take a deep dive. Bring some friends, and we'll go from there. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Peace.
Bye-bye.